Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of the Steelers preview. And we all, I hope, are keeping our fingers crossed, hoping that this is not the final Steelers preview of the 2018 season, but it could be. As you know, if you listened to the show last night, the standard is the standard. There's a lot on the line this week, but the Steelers don't control their own destiny. They need to win, beating the Bengals, which is what we're going to highlight primarily tonight, and they need some help. They need the Cleveland Browns. They need the freaking Cleveland Browns. Lord help us all to go into Baltimore and M&T Bank Stadium and beat the Ravens. If they do so, the Steelers win the AFC North. If not, season's over. With that said, I bring in my co-host, Bryan Davis, who's back from his sabbatical and is ready to talk about some Steelers. Bryan, how are you this afternoon/evening?
I feel dirty, Jeff, but I'm feeling good. I'm optimistically dirty, or dirtily optimistic. I don't know what that means. I even followed Antonio Brown's directions. I put the S on the back of my Batman jersey here. So I am full in on Greg Williams and the Cleveland Browns.
Yes, and for those that don't understand where that's coming from, maybe you're not social media savvy, Antonio Brown took several of his jerseys, laid them out, and put S's next to his last name and said, who's rooting for the Browns this weekend? Bryan Davis, for those that might be listening to the podcast form, is following suit. He has his throwback Batman jersey, which is Antonio Brown, and put an S there. So he is all garbed up and ready to go. And I just want to preface this, we will be talking about the Browns. We will be talking about the Ravens and where we think that game is going to go. But we're going to start off just like we have every single week this season, talking about the upcoming Steelers matchup, and that is between the Bengals and the Steelers. I got to be honest, Dave Schofield joined me last night for the standard is the standard, and we both said that the worst possible scenario in this entire crap fest, which is week 17 right now, is if somehow the Ravens lose and the Steelers trip up against the Bengals. Now, what's going to be coming out in a few days, probably on the Cincy Jungle, which is SB Nation's Bengals website, they sent me some questions. They wanted me to answer them, and they said, what do you think the odds are of the Steelers overlooking the Bengals and losing in week 17? And my answer was, I guess it's not impossible. We've seen Mike Tomlin teams lose in certain situations, and playing subpar teams, sometimes even at home, can be that recipe for disaster. Then again, I said there's so much on the line. They're probably pretty ticked off after last week. I don't see it happening. Bryan, what about you? You think there's any chance that this game is a heck of a lot closer than a lot of people think?
You know what? Maybe I'm too optimistic. I don't think it's in their fiber to even think about losing this game. They're not overlooking it by all means, but I love the threat level midnight from The Office quote, and I'm still going to overuse it. That's exactly where we are. Threat level midnight. They know it. They know they need a gift. They're not going to overlook that gift.
Okay.
I don't see them tripping up because they're in desperation mode. And in desperation mode, you're letting it all hang out. I don't see them losing this game. And if they do lose this game, then they deserve to be out. Even though we have a lot of people commenting right now that they don't deserve to be in anyways, which, stop it.
Well,
believe. If you like this team, I'm just saying, if you like this team, you want them in anyways. And you follow them and you support them getting in. You don't say, well, they just don't deserve to be in, so I hope they lose.
Well,
then the hashtag Fire Tomlin comes out.
Well, that's been out for the entire season. I think the question, and this is how I titled this show, both for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com and our YouTube channel, is, do the Steelers deserve a spot in the playoffs? Now, there's a difference between getting in and being happy about it and rooting for them to get in and deserving a spot. So, Bryan, answer the question. Do you think the Steelers deserve a spot after losses or games like the tie in week 1 to the Browns, losing to the Raiders, blowing leads against the Chargers, losing in desperation mode against the Broncos? After this season, which really had its lulls, you think they deserve a spot?
Well, let me throw a question back at you. does that mean that a team like Indianapolis and the Titans deserve it more? And
Well,
when they have pretty much close to the same number of wins and losses,
no,
any team that
one of
is
those
this
teams,
close deserves to get in.
one of those teams that you just mentioned is going to be a double digit. The team that gets in is going to have 10 wins. That's a double digit season. I mean, I think that's where I would say is the watermark, so to speak, for a solid season. And the Steelers aren't going to get there. Ravens, they won't get there either unless, well, if they win, they will. Am I right? Because they're 9-6 heading into this Week 17 game, I believe. Do you have that? Do you know?
Yes.
I don't know. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, you're
they
right.
are 9-6, and the Steelers are 8-6-1.
Yeah. So
You're saying that half a game? Because here's the thing: the Ravens lost to Cleveland, and if the Steelers get in, the Ravens lose to Cleveland twice. Pittsburgh never lost to Cleveland. Pittsburgh tied with Cleveland, and now we're seeing that a tie to Cleveland is not the worst thing in the world.
well, and we said that on the show after week one that a tie is better than a loss for a lot of reasons. If the Steelers somehow lost that game, then it would be like if TJ Watt didn't block that field goal. I mean, the Steelers wouldn't even be in this situation. But at the same time, I look at this and say, I'm not going to go back and say they played them, they beat them. I'm never going to say that a team doesn't deserve to make it to the playoffs because if you just need to get in, period. You just need to get in. I'm hoping that they get in. We'll talk about predictions for if they'll get in later in the show. But that's the ultimate driving question here. I think a lot of fans, they're so angry, and I can't blame them, but they're thinking this team doesn't even deserve to be there. So I disagree with that. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here and asking you these questions, but ultimately we'll see how it plays out. But as I said earlier, the Steelers have to take care of their own business first, and that happens at 4:25 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you adjust your schedules. It's not a 1 o'clock start. They moved the game back. They will be playing at the same exact time as the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns at 4:25. So there will be a lot of scoreboard watching going on at Heinz Field this Sunday. But let's talk about this Bengals game first. If you're a first-time listener to the show, maybe you just stumbled upon the podcast on YouTube or on many of our audio platforms like Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, whatever. What we do is we break down the upcoming game in 3 key matchups. We each give 3. Sometimes they're very specific. Sometimes they're more general. It could be player versus player. It could be pass rush versus pass offense, pass pro, pass protection. It could be a number of those things. And we really just bounce ideas off each other as we go. And so that's where we start. So, Brian, go ahead. You were off last week. I'll let you go first. What is your number 1 key matchup for Steelers-Bengals this Sunday?
You know, the first thing I'm thinking about is the Bengals passing game. I don't care if it is Jeff Driscoll, Andy Dalton. I don't care if Boomer Esiason comes in or Ken Anderson or the throwing Samoan Jack Thompson. They've got to shut down the passing game. And the number 1 passing threat right now, the receiving threat, would be Tyler Boyd if he is indeed healthy and playing. So last I heard, I believe he is playing. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Jeff. But I believe Boyd is.
He has missed some practice time this week. They're not sure what they're going to do with him. So it's kind of 50-50 as when this is being recorded.
So with that being said, I'm still thinking that I got to think that he's going to go ahead and play. If he is healthy enough to play, you got to shut him down. Did not shut him down last time. So it looks like you're probably going to see Cody Sensabaugh on him, or maybe Hayden moves over and takes him on since he's the number 1 threat. But Tyler Boyd, if he's playing, would have to be shut down first. And that's for me, number 1. So the Steelers defensive backs against the Bengals receivers, and namely Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, and Tyler Boyd, a Pitt product, is a guy that a lot of people know well on the Steelers sideline. I'm going to go a step further for my first key matchup and say that the Steelers defense needs to shut down the run. Joe Mixon is a really good back. He's a dual threat back. He can catch the ball in the backfield. He can also run between the tackles. He's elusive in the tackle box. So for me, I think that I think they need to stop the run. I agree with you 100%. I'm not saying that your key matchup is not worthy or right. It's certainly absolutely right and carries its own weight. But I think that if they can make them one dimensional, and this also goes into the Steelers' offense, getting a lead, taking care of the lead, extending the lead, then the Bengals are going to have to throw to get back in it. And with Driscoll at quarterback, with no A.J. Green, with no Tyler Eifert, who hasn't been there all season, basically, and you only have Tyler Boyd, it makes it a lot easier. But you have to stop the run, have to get a lead, have to protect that lead. So taking Joe Mixon out of the game, that's, for me, key matchup number one. What's number two for you, Brian?
Well, the Steelers, I think key matchup number two for them would be just play Steelers against desperation. Now, that's going to sound a little crazy to you, but look, you need to play your game. Don't get crazy. Don't get fancy. Don't watch the clock. Just be your Steelers. Don't try to fool anybody. I think the Steelers sometimes, and we saw it last week with the 3rd and 2, we saw it with the fake punt. Sometimes they go against their game, and they're like, we need to fool you, instead of just telling you straight out, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're best at. Try to stop us. So in those situations, if you're doing well with 5 wide, make them stop 5 wide. Don't get desperate. Don't get crazy. Don't get cute. Just go in and be the Steelers. Be the number 1 passing team in the league. Be the juggernaut that you can be on offense, and shove it down their throat, whether by the run or the pass. What you do best, you do it, and you don't go against your own grain.
Yeah, I like that. I think attitude is something that is oftentimes overlooked, not only with the Steelers, but just in football in general. You got to have that. We don't care about anything else. You can't control the other game, so you go out there, lay the smack down, and then let the chips fall where they may, as they say. As I continue to rhyme, my second key matchup is going to be, maybe it's not a key matchup. Maybe I'm just really excited to see it. If you haven't noticed, James Conner has been a full participant at practice the last 2 days, and it looks as if he is going to be back in the lineup in Week 17. I'm excited to see he and Jalen Samuels in the backfield for the Steelers offense. And how do they handle that? What does it look like? Now, I know that James Conner's coming off injury, so I wouldn't necessarily think that what they do on Sunday, whether that's the end of the season or whether they then start prepping for the playoffs, is going to be how they dictate. That's not really going to be what they do in the future, so to speak. Because if they don't think James Conner is prepared for a full workload, then maybe we'll see more Jalen Samuels than what we normally would. But I'm anxious to see what they could do with these two backs, because they have very different skill sets. Jalen Samuels needs that space. James Conner is more of a, between the tackles, can burst north and south. Jalen Samuels is a better receiver, but James Conner is better at like pass protection. So you have these two backs that have different. I'm anxious to see what exactly is going on in how they handle this. How they handle this backfield. I want to see them run the ball well. That's to me exciting. If they can just take the life out of the Cincinnati Bengals, that would be awesome. And you do that by just running it down their throat. Maybe one of those drives with like 80 yards or 75 yards and all runs. I'd love to see that. That's my key matchup. Number 2 is, how did the Steelers handle their backfield now that Jalen Samuels and James Conner are healthy? So what's your last one, Brian?
Well, I'm looking at TJ Watt against the offensive line of the Cincinnati Bengals. That pass rush, you need to get to Driscoll. You need to just punch him in the mouth, knock him down, and establish a presence. And I think TJ Watt has become the man on defense for them. So that's exactly who I'm looking at to just try to set the tone on defense. So if TJ could get in there and get sack number 13 and 14 and 15 on the season, and just really screw up any momentum that Driscoll tries to find, because look, this guy's getting paid like an NFL quarterback. He's shown that 2 weeks ago that he could win a National Football League game. So if you could just knock him around, set that tone, that's going to make it a tough day for Cincinnati if they're shut down. And to piggyback on what you said before, if you're shutting down Mixon, you're shutting down Driscoll. It's going to be a really tough game, and that 17 point spread would be justified.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think for my third matchup here, if you didn't notice, again, heading back at the injury report, Antonio Brown has missed the first 2 days of practice with a coach's decision / knee. The knee injury is new. Have not heard anything about that from Mike Tomlin, whether it was his post-game press conference after Week 16 or in his Tuesday press conference this week on Christmas Day. But although I really, really doubt that Antonio Brown would miss this game, it is going to put an emphasis on the receiving core. If he's not 100%, does he play every snap like he normally does? Juju Smith-Schuster, who was recently named team MVP today, voted on by the players, he can step up, and who's going to step up opposite him? Will it be Eli Rogers? Will it be Ryan Switzer? Will it be James Washington? Will it be more of the tight ends? That's what I'm looking to see. I hope that this key matchup is null and void and that Antonio Brown plays and is healthy. But on the outside chance that he doesn't play, it's really going to put some stress on that passing attack that you mentioned earlier, Brian, in your keys. And it's also going to put more stress on my second key matchup, which was the running game and that offensive line. So there you go. Real quick, before we get to the player to watch, which is our next segment in our preview show, I wanted to ask you, Brian, what you thought of Juju Smith-Schuster winning the team MVP award, which was announced today.
You know what? I loved it. And I was thinking, all season long, I was telling you it was going to be James Conner. But after he got injured, I could tell it wasn't going to be. You could have made a case for Ben Roethlisberger. You could have made a case for TJ Watt. You could have made a case for Joe Hayden. Definitely made a case for Antonio Brown. But really, the guy who has really made this team what it is, and I know it's a 8-6-1 team, but the guy who has kept this team alive has been Juju Smith-Schuster. He has had a fantastic season. Just like Antonio Brown, he has proven that he is a number one wide receiver in this game. That's what makes this the most dangerous wide receiving core in the league with just two guys. So I love the fact that Juju got it, especially on the heels of that mistake. That, look, that fumble the other day, the way that he reacted from that fumble showed me what kind of teammate he is. And that probably, that's one of the reasons that these guys are voting for him, because they know what kind of teammate he is. When I see a guy crying on the sidelines because he made a huge mistake, when I see the heart and soul that this guy puts into the team, I know how much he's beloved in this locker room. And I'm going to go back to a year ago with a quote from Alejandro Villanueva when he said, everybody needs a little Juju in their lives. They love this guy, and they love what he's doing on the field. Kudos. I'm so glad for the second year in a row he's won a major award. So send the leg lamp to Juju Smith-Schuster.
The funny thing is I'm back in my hometown in West Virginia, and so on my phone I get a message saying Juju Smith-Schuster wins team MVP. And I'm excited because I'm a big Juju fan. I love the kid. I think he brings excitement. All those things that you mentioned are very valid. The next thing I thought was, what does this say about Ben Roethlisberger? Because if you didn't know, since he was drafted in 2004, he's only won the award once, and that was in 2009. What does this say about the franchise quarterback who has led the team to a lot of success, no losing seasons, 3 Super Bowls, won 2 of them, and I know this is a new team, different era, all that stuff, only won it once. So, Brian, I have my opinion. What does that tell you about Big Ben? That, my gosh, he's only won team MVP, which is voted on by the players in that locker room. He's only won it once. What does that say to you?
I see where you're going with this. Maybe there's a disconnect between leadership. Maybe he's viewed as a prima donna. I don't know. I will go outside the box on this one and say Chuck Noll had never won Coach of the Year in his entire beautiful career. So maybe he's taken for granted expected to do that kind of stuff, and maybe some of the gaffes in this season, like the crucial interceptions that happened during that losing streak, came into play in it. So I mean, it could be a number of things. I I keep on going back though to Antonio Brown, sticking up for him just a few weeks ago, saying he's our leader, he's our MVP, he's our guy. So I don't know. I know the offensive line loves this guy. I know they would just walk through traffic for this guy. So we've seen Antonio Brown go ahead and stick up for him. Like I said, if I'm voting, I was voting Juju as well. I was thinking about this morning, and when I read it, I'm like, that was my vote. So, and I think a lot of people have mentioned that. And like I said, after the fumble, you and I had a conversation just a couple of days ago. And you were talking about what Juju means to this team. And so, you know what? I really don't know if maybe we're reading too much into this, but I think it's just Juju's time. And I mean, Ben's numbers have been fantastic, but those interceptions have probably been the highest we've seen.
No, you're right, and I don't know. It just seems so strange for me when I see, man, he's only won it once. Now, Antonio Brown has won it 4 times since 2010, I think, and I keep on thinking to myself, well, someone's got to throw the guy the football. I mean, he makes all these tremendous catches, but someone's thrown him the football, and the majority of the time it's Ben Roethlisberger. I went back since 1969. Terry Bradshaw won the award twice. I want to say in 77 and 78. Neil O'Donnell won it in 1995. Cordell Stewart won it in 2001. And that's it. Those are the only quarterbacks that have ever won the team MVP, which I guess you could say makes sense. But at the same time, Ben Roethlisberger's done a heck of a lot more than Neil O'Donnell and Cordell Stewart combined. So I don't know.
So maybe.
Go ahead.
So maybe it goes back to what I was saying. He's expected to throw the ball. And he's expected to do those things. Maybe the interceptions chopped a little bit of the luster off of it. But, as far as I'm concerned, like Juju's season was more phenomenal because he's not expected to do that. The quarterback's expected to be throwing the ball and doing that and have gaudy numbers anyways.
Okay. I just want to bring it up. I am going to run an article tomorrow about that. And just saying, asking the fan pulse, so to speak, of Steeler Nation and ask what they think about what does this say anything about the way the team views Ben Roethlisberger in the locker room? Or maybe they're more on your side where it's just a matter of expectations are different. So, all right, put that behind us. Let's go to
I'm going to read that article, Jeff.
Yeah, you should. You should read that article, Brian.
So,
okay, so now let's go to a player that can change the game. And I know this is tough because the Bengals are a beat-up group. Vontaze Burfict is not – they're not even sure if he's going to play in this game because he suffered his 7th reported concussion, his 2nd this month. This came from Adam Schefter, who came from the ESPN Bengals reporter, the equivalent of Jeremy Fowler for the Steelers, who said that there's now talk that this isn't just season ending potentially. This could be career threatening for Burfict. And so I'm not sure if he's going to play, but if he is going to play, Vontaze Burfict is my guy to say could be a game-changing player because when he's on the field, and I said this last night to Dave Schofield, he is probably the only player, just in watching NFL football, that I have feared going against my favorite team because I feel like he is out to injure. He's out to say, if the Steelers are going to make the playoffs, they're going to do it without Antonio Brown because I'm going to take him out. And I feel like that's the way he plays the game. I don't like it. I don't think that's right. He's been fined and suspended so many times. So if he plays, I would say that he is my game-changing player because he can change the game. He's extremely talented. I don't want to take anything away from his talent, but he's also extremely dirty, and the way that he plays the game is not my cup of tea. So if he doesn't play, then I would go with a player like I would go with James Conner and maybe Jalen Samuels if you have a little. If you can combine them into one because of the running game that I spoke about earlier. So not to cop out there, but that's my game-changing player. What do you think?
Well, can I just piggyback on Vontez Burfict for a second?
Yeah,
I
go
want
for
to,
it.
look, I don't want to say anybody deserves anything, and I never will, but the way he plays the game and the way he approaches the game, this concussions are going to happen, and he is bringing them upon himself in a way. And I want to go back to 2 years ago when David DeCastro did one of my favorite things ever. He put his head down in a way because he was going after Burfict was going after DeCastro's knees. DeCastro knew it. He put his head down in a way where he knew it wasn't going to hurt him, but he knew it was going to knock out Burfict, and that's exactly what he did because he was leading with a crown and he was head hunting. And so that's what happens when you do that. So I mean, he made his deal with the devil, and he's lost if this is the end of his career. And you know what? He is a fantastic football player. Just like I know this isn't hockey talk. I think Tom Wilson is a fantastic hockey player for the Capitals. But you know what? He
Blech.
plays dirty. He plays dirty. Yeah, I agree with you. But when you play dirty, you deserve everything that comes to you. So there you go. So my game-changing player, this might even be a sleeper. You're going to maybe I should save this for sleeper, but you're going to think I'm absolutely crazy by saying this. Week 17 is Ryan Switzer's game. Ryan Switzer is going to shine in this game. This is not a fantasy pick. I'm telling you, Ryan Switzer, this is his game to just complete. We've seen signs of it. Ben loves him and trusts him. I can see this being a game where he scores 2 touchdowns. I could see him bringing back a punt return. I could also see him taking a scream into the end zone. So I'm just going to go out on a limb and say number 10, Ryan Switzer is going to be a game changer because they're not going to see it coming.
Well, with that said, let's go right into our fantasy football segment, which is where we say start 'em, sit 'em. Is Ryan Switzer your starter? The guy that you say plug him into your FanDuel lineup, he's going to get you sneaky points.
I mean, you very well could, but since I already used him up, I'll go ahead and go with somebody else. I would go ahead and spend the money on Antonio Brown this week.
Even after
I
he's
could see
missed
him
2
lighting
games?
it up as well.
Even after he's missed 2 practices?
What's that?
Even after he missed the 2 practices this week?
I would just like Juju last week. You knew he was going to play. This is the playoffs. I don't see Antonio Brown missing. Yeah, I would put the money on him. If he misses 2 practices, maybe they knock his dollar value down a little bit. And I just taking this from a guy who had his highest point total in the league last week and of the season last week. So I mean, you gotta trust my gut.
Okay. I'm gonna go with Juju as my stardom. If you're gonna pick a receiver, I think that he has been the more consistent receiver this season. The only difference has been that Antonio Brown has gotten in the end zone more. And so I know Antonio Brown's coming off a huge game against the Saints, and this should be this game against Cincinnati should feel like going against a peewee team compared to that Saints defense they just went against. But nonetheless, the Bengals are a division foe, and they know the Steelers well. But I think Juju Smith-Schuster, whether he's going against Denard or Drake Kirkpatrick, is going to thrive on that matchup. And like you said earlier, I think he kind of wants to rebound from that fumble. I'd say for a starter, start Juju Smith-Schuster. Okay, Brian, what about your guy that you're like, sit him? Just sit him. Don't even worry about it. He's not going to perform well.
Here, you know what? There's not too many guys I want to sit. But I'm going to go ahead and I could easily cop out and say sit the Steeler defense. I could easily so I don't even want to go Steelers on this.
Why would you?
I'm actually going to say Joe Mixon.
Okay, Joe Mixon. All right, there you go.
I'm actually going to say Joe Mixon. I think they're going to shut him down. I mean, it's easy. I could say Jeff Driscoll, but no one's going to start him anyways.
Right. Yeah.
So I think they can shut down Joe Mixon.
I would say think about starting the Steelers defense because I think they could put up some numbers. I think they're going to be able to get to Driscoll, get some sacks, which are going to get you extra points. I feel like they might be getting close to some turnovers. Maybe they get a defensive touchdown. If you get that, it's a tremendous fantasy value for your defense. But I like you're not starting Joe Mixon. I'm going to say I am going to say stay away from the running backs of the Steelers in this matchup. The reason being is that no one right now knows how they're going to use them. I haven't seen any reports about James Conner was getting all the first team reps or Jalen Samuels is more of a third down back. I haven't seen anything like that. And so for me, I would really it would really be crappy on your fantasy. And if you want to play both of them, I get that. But at the same time, if you play James Conner and maybe James Conner is not playing every series, maybe they're doing a series on, a series off, or if you start Jalen Samuels and James Conner is healthy enough to get the brunt of the carries, and Jalen Samuels is only playing sparingly like he did at the beginning of the year, that's why I just say take your running backs, get them somewhere else. This is probably the one game I would say don't play a Steelers running back. Not that they're not going to be successful, but when in fantasy, you want that one individual to perform, and I'm not sure who that's going to be. So that's who I say avoid this week. You agree with that, Brian?
You know what? I can't argue with that either. I mean, I think that's actually a good play there.
Yeah, you're welcome. So
good non-play.
Okay, let's get to prediction time. I think we both picked the Steelers to win. Am I right? But let's talk scores. What is your final score for this game?
I'm actually still looking at 27 to 9.
Wow, 9? Holy smokes. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's good.
I don't really see them putting points on this team.
Okay. I'm going to go with 38 to 23. I think the Bengals score some points in garbage time, which make it a little bit more. It make it look a little bit better, but this is a dominating performance by the Steelers, in my opinion. So for me, we both like the Steelers, but let's be honest. This is only half of the equation. The other half is the other AFC North matchup, and that is Browns versus Ravens in M&T Bank Stadium. And I said this last night, and I hate to constantly refer back to our last show, and I recommend anyone listening to this show to check out The Standard is a Standard. I thought my show with Dave, who was filling in for Lance, was really good. I said this last night. I'll say it again on this show. If I were to hand pick a team that I feel like could really give the Ravens trouble, it would be the Browns for a lot of reasons, because the Browns are young. They're a team that has not had success, and they really want to end the year on a positive. And so what better way to end the season than by knocking out a divisional rival from the playoffs? Okay, that's number one. Number two, if I were to pick a coach, a defensive coach, a coach that doesn't give a flying you-know-what about anything, and its job is to stop Lamar Jackson in this running game that they have going, I might pick Greg Williams, because he's crazy enough to say we're going to sell out. If we're going to lose this game, it's because Lamar Jackson is going to have to put the ball in the air. They're not going to run it on us, and I think that's what they're going to do. So that's number two. Number three, Baker Mayfield is a type of playmaker that frustrates the Ravens' defense. Ben Roethlisberger is a lot like this in a lot of ways, because Roethlisberger can extend the play. Mayfield is a lot more athletic and can run the ball more so than Ben can, but at the same time, Baker Mayfield is not only the most accurate rookie quarterback in the NFL right now, but he's also, I think, the most poised, and he's also a quarterback that isn't afraid. He's not afraid of this situation. He's not afraid of the defense. This is not too big for him. And so I like the Browns to win this game. Final score, I'm not sure if I can give you that off the top of my head. Let me think about it for a second. I'll try to do some numbers in my head, but I think the Browns, believe it or not, go into Baltimore and win for all those reasons that I said. And it's going to come down to, in my opinion, can the Browns offense score on the Ravens defense? I think the Browns defense does a great job taking the ball away. Dave Schofield had a phenomenal stat last night where he said that in the 6 games that Lamar Jackson has played, no defense that he faced has ranked higher than 13th in the league in takeaways. The Browns rank second. They're phenomenal at taking the football away. So that could be a big player here. But I like the Browns to win. Bryan, what do you think?
You know what? I have to believe that something special is going to happen. I could be pessimistic here. I mean, conventional wisdom says you go to M&T Bank, the Ravens are flying high, but I really, something in my gut is saying we're going to see something special. We've seen this movie before with the Ravens having to win. All they have to do is win and they're in, and they blow it. We saw it last year. I could see that happening again this year, but I could really see Greg Williams, who I think is special. Maybe I'm drinking the Hard Knocks Kool-Aid, the orange Kool-Aid from that show on HBO, but I love Greg Williams. I mean, like, take all the Bounty Gate away from 10 years ago or whatever. I think this guy is something. I think he's coaching for his job, because it's hard to say that the guy goes 6-2 down the stretch that this team doesn't believe in him. And I really think they do. I think they're playing for their coach's job. I really think they believe in him. In fact, I kind of there's something crazy in my mind is hoping he loses his job and Pittsburgh snaps him up as a defensive coordinator. I would love to see that happen, but that's just a crazy scenario that happens in Bryan world. But with that being said, I love Greg Williams. This is their Super Bowl. They already said it. I can see them going in and winning, a 20-17 ball game. And I'm not. Maybe I got to start believing in Lamar Jackson, but I just don't believe yet. I just don't see it happening. I thought the Chargers went into that game cocky, thinking that, hey, we're rolling and we're going to beat everybody. So we're going to find out who Baltimore is for real, and we're going to find out this weekend. Not last weekend against the Chargers, because they weren't expected to win. This is a game they're expected to win. We're going to find out who Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens are, and that's going to tell the tale. And I'm still thinking that the Browns are going to be good enough to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, you need a defensive coordinator that's smart enough to be able to say, like I said earlier, you're going to stop the run. They have the personnel to spy Lamar Jackson. If he wants to throw it, that's fine. If he wants to run it, they're going to be able to come up. Maybe that's Peppers. I'm not sure how they're going to deploy their men there, but they have great cornerbacks. Not that they're necessary, but Denzel Ward is turning into one of the really, really nice young cornerbacks in the league. So I'll tell you what, it's going to be interesting to watch, and there will be plenty of people watching this game at Heinz Field. Scoreboard watching will be incredible. If I didn't have to write the game recap, I very well might watch more of the Ravens game than the Steelers game. But I wrote an article today, it ran about early afternoon, about what do Steeler fans think is going to be the fate of the Steelers 2018 season. And I put a poll in there and I kind of laid out the land and during the article, and the poll options were the Steelers win, but the Ravens win, season over. The other option was Steelers win, Browns win, playoff bound. And the other one would be Steelers lose, nothing else matters. And shockingly, we had about 1,000 votes so far. 50% say that the Steelers win, but the Ravens win, and that means that the Steelers miss out on the playoffs. Where 42% say that the Steelers win, the Browns win, and they're playoff bound. So really, when it comes to the fan base, it's kind of split. And I know that Lance Williams, he picked the Steelers to win, but he picked the Ravens to win as well. Dave Schofield and I both agreed that we think that the Browns have a really good chance. We said 50-50 chance of winning. It's kind of a coin toss game or a pick 'em game, so to speak. So you're saying, though, Bryan, that your gut tells you that the Steelers make the postseason?
My gut says they make the postseason and even make a splash, because the Steelers are a team that, when their head's on straight, can beat anybody in this entire field. Even though they did not win the other day against who I think is the cream of the NFL right now, the New Orleans Saints, they did enough to win, and they should have won. So I really think that this is not the end of this fairy tale story. One more thing against the Cleveland Browns. We're talking about Greg Williams. We're talking about that defense. We're talking about Baker Mayfield. I haven't talked about Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
This guy is putting a very special rookie season. So, I mean, if they end up 7-8-1 this season, that's a huge win because I mean the over/under in Vegas was 5 wins. So I mean they're really putting something together. He's a big part of it. What he's doing there too. This is a team to look at in the future, and I don't think that they're going to go out on a sour note this year. And Nick Chubb's going to have a lot to do with it as well.
I almost feel like some Browns fans might. I think they're kind of in this game that they're going to hire Greg Williams, and I don't know if they're with Dorsey as the general manager there. I'm sure he'll give him an option, but I don't think they're going to go ahead and just flat out give him the job. So for me, it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. But hopefully the Steelers get lucky, and that's exactly what it would take. But Dave and I both agreed, and Brian, I'll ask you this. I feel like if this team just gets in, man, I mean, they showed it last week, they can beat anybody. I mean, this team can win the Super Bowl, don't you think?
I do. That's why I said they could beat anybody in the field.
Yeah. Okay, so
and they've shown it.
Yeah, so normally I go to questions in our YouTube live chat, but after monitoring, or I should say following that live chat for the past few minutes, it's turned into nothing but Mike Tomlin versus Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin stinks, and we should fire Mike Tomlin. So therefore, I'm not going to answer any questions today's show. So, Brian, why don't you say a little something to Steeler Nation before we go ahead and head off for the weekend, and maybe get some people right now.
You know what? I have been following this team since birth, but really since 1979. And I have been through some very lean years. 1985, horrendous year. I've seen them all. I've seen a lot of things, and I've seen the Bill Cowher years when people wanted to run Bill Cowher, who was from town, out of town. I've seen it year in and year out. And for me, if this team is 1-14, I'm still tuning in. Whether I'm having to write an article or do a podcast about it, I'm watching this team because this team is in my heart. I bleed black, I bleed gold, and I tell you what, I love everything about this team, warts and all. Big warts and all, big hairy warts and all. I don't care. This is my team. And if you're a true Pittsburgh Steelers fan, you're allowed to get frustrated. I grant that. I understand that. But if it's your passion, you follow them. Whoever is leading them, you follow them. And you got to just take the blinders off and look at everything and see where it's going and where it has been. And what you're seeing is the fact that we're spoiled. And guess what? We're spoiled because we have had a great run throughout all those years. I mean, we're going on. I mean, it's pretty soon. It's going to be 50 years since the Immaculate Reception in just a few years. And so 50 years of greatness, basically, with some, ups and downs in between. But if you're the Detroit Lion fan, you would kill to be in this situation. You would kill to be in this situation if you were a Cardinals fan, a Browns fan. Look, the Browns fans are getting excited about the fact that they're going to be 7-8-1 possibly at the end of this year. And that's a big victory. 7-8-1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers is enough to jump off the Clemente Bridge. We are spoiled. And the reason we're spoiled is because we've had greatness. And look, you know what? You don't have to love everybody, but quit with the firing everybody, and this team doesn't deserve it, and I hate this team, and they're just overpaid jerks. Stop it. Just love your team or get off the boat. And I know I know I'm on a soapbox, but stop it. If you don't love this team, go watch HGTV. Flip or flop. Do that.
Maybe that's what they should do, is you either flip or flop. So, all right. Hey, I agree 100% with everything that Brian just said. And I think that's a very fitting way to end this show, because we can be celebrating next week and talking about a playoff, a wild card game, or we could be down in the dumps and talking about all the different areas that the Steelers missed out. and shot themselves in the foot. I don't think anyone's going to be blaming others. There might be some that blame the officials, but I don't think many are going to be like, oh, this is why we're not in the playoffs, because really they made their bed. You got to lay in it now. So I think for me, I want to let everyone know, I said this last night, this show is going to change. Like, for the Steelers win and the Ravens win and the season's over, Bryan and I will be back next week. It might be a different show, might be a different theme. We're going to have to talk about that. We haven't really talked about off-season podcasts yet, but we will still be giving you audio content along with tons of content on the website behindthesteelcurtain.com. So as always, if you don't follow us on YouTube, go to YouTube, search BTSC Steelers Radio, like, subscribe. We appreciate the support. If you follow us on the audio platforms, make sure you know that we're available everywhere. That's Stitcher, that's Google Play, that's iTunes, that's Spotify. I know I'm forgetting one of them, but we're everywhere. Just go there, search Steelers, and typically we're one of the first podcasts that shows up. Make sure you subscribe. Get all of our don't miss an episode of this great Steelers content, because if you're like me, I love sports talk radio, but I really don't want to sit through 20 minutes of Cowboys talk, 20 minutes of stupid Packers talk about Aaron Rodgers, and then to hear 5 minutes of the Steelers. I want to hear nothing but the Steelers, and that's what we provide for you. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be back next week for another Steelers preview. If not, we'll still be back. We'll be talking about it. We'll probably be pissed off. So make sure you tune in. We'll see you next week for sure on another Steelers podcast.